Welcome to Meet the Researchers, where we get to know the team behind C4Net's Enhanced System Planning Project Victoria. This is an extended interview with John Theunissen, whose rich career in the energy and network security sector has led him to an advisory role on the ESPV project.
Hello there, I'm John Theunissen. I'm recently retired, or transitioning to retirement, and I'm very privileged to be part of the C4Net ESP project.
Hi John, welcome to the podcast. What drew you to your field of expertise?
Coming out of school, I wasn't quite sure of which line of study or career to follow. The vocational tests I'd done indicated that I had a sort of a bias towards the math science sector, so I chose to do a BSc degree in electrical engineering. It wasn't, however, until my final year of study that I discovered the area that I was most interested in pursuing. We had an engaging lecturer from industry. Strangely enough, he wasn't an academic. He was a practicing guy in the industry, but he was passionate about his career and particularly his subject matter. And he taught us about power system protection, and I felt attracted to it because I saw it as being at the intersection of multiple disciplines within the broader power system environment. One had to be intimately familiar with power system control, its operation, power system stability, but you also needed to know the various behaviors and characteristics of primary big power transformers, circuit breakers, and also the secondary plant, sort of current transformers, voltage transformers, those sort of within the power system. But then you also had to understand the sort of communication and instrumentation techniques that are applied in power systems. And so this intersection really drew me in of these various disciplines, because this was I saw this as being at the center, because you just had to know all that stuff, or you had to learn it. Anyway, and another attraction was having to work with sequence components and sort of transformations into the impedance plane or the Z plane, which protection engineers have to just normally deal with. So it's this kind of almost ethereal type of sort of part of the electrical engineering, which drew me in, I suppose, is kind of what I'd say. And with that as an interest, I joined Siemens in 1981. Was with them for many years. Then joined the integrated, the vertically integrated utility in South Africa, ESP, and then eventually came across to Australia in 95 and had a career within AusNet and its predecessor sort of companies from then until the end of last year when I left. So that's a bit about how I got sort of drawn into the industry.
What excited you about the ESPV project?
It's not often that you get an opportunity to carry out industry-led research that's holistic in nature and focused on the longer term. Industry research often tends to be targeted and somewhat siloed, so also being sort of focused on the nearer horizons, not something which is very far away. And look, we're living through a very exciting time in the power system industry, where there are large-scale transformations occurring in many of the industry sectors. And so there's a greater need for more integrated research activities, both short-term and longer-term. Addressing immediate challenges almost always takes priority, which I guess is understandable. However, if one can take a longer view, this is very valuable in shaping strategies and in also tempering those short-term actions, which ultimately should result in a better outcome for the industry, for the stakeholders, and for the customers, which the industry serves. The last occurrence of just thinking back, the last occurrence where we had this kind of come together in a research sort of context was the Electricity Network Transformation Roadmap Initiative, which was led by CSIRO in 2016 and 2017. This was a great initiative, and it produced valuable outputs and learning. However, the scale of the renewable transformation hadn't fully manifested at that point, and there were still fairly significant factional positions that had been sort of adopted within the industry, which in a way probably impacted its continued relevance, not so much at the strategic level, but more at a granular level. Now, when we think about the ESP project excites me because it provides the same kind of integrated research opportunity at a time when government strategies are more mature. The disruptive technology application is already scaling, not just emerging, but it's scaling. And it's clear that a new techno-economic approach to managing the power system is going to be needed in future. I mean, and this just by nature requires a greater integration of its parts and the interoperability that's required to be, for it to succeed. And this also comes at a time when the dominant industry focus is on the challenges at hand and in the near term. I mean, the players in the industry have never been more busy at trying to sort of solve the challenges and problems at the moment and in the near term. So this then gives more relevance to this longer term applied research that is so central to the ESP project. The other factor that excites me about the ESP sort of project is the quality of the researchers within the project, and that this work that we're now doing within ESP builds on and extends the previous research work that these researchers have already completed in conjunction with various industry players. So this is not just sort of an insular piece of work. This kind of is flowing on from work that has already been done, and it actually brings into being a more integrated sort of tapestry, if you like, of researchers and industry. And that's, that whole thing, that's really great. I mean, that's kind of what we, that's what we want in terms of this kind of research project. So,
what is your role on the Enhanced System Planning Project Victoria?
Over the years, I've always been interested in being able to offer some sort of value back to the industry, and so this is principally about that. So my role within the project is to provide industry-centric technical advice and guidance to the research teams. I'm not a researcher, but the task here is providing industry-centric advice, if you like, to them. But it's really to ensure, or trying to ensure, that the outputs from each of the work packages in the ESP, they kind of mesh. They build off the same assumptions, and the outputs from each other, and they're complementary sort of deliverables, if you like. Also, trying to ensure, or helping ensure, that the deliverables and outputs are focused on the industries or the sector's identified needs, so we don't go down a rabbit hole with something that the industry is not really that interested in or not really requiring. And it can then also be integrated with key stakeholder use cases, so it becomes more usable in an industry setting. Allied to that, it's also trying to help the research to deliver outputs in the most usable form, so that network businesses, the market operator and others in the sector can actually use and apply the outputs of the research. And then there's the communication aspect to the relevant stakeholders. So I'm helping to effectively communicate what's been happening in the project to industry, government, planners, and that. I've got to point out, as I said, it's a supporting role. I'm not a decision maker in the project, and I'm not tasked with any typical project governance activities, which I have to say I'm quite pleased about. So, yeah.
Please share a fun fact about your field of expertise.
My career has been in the field of power system protection, did you know that the first sophisticated protective relaying devices, obviously you had fuses and things like that, which were fairly simple devices, but the first sophisticated protective relaying devices were developed by watchmakers. So it was the first, it was the electromechanical age, and the creative use of springs, gears, rotating electromagnetic discs, was a logical extension of watchmaking activities and skills. So that's kind of where, watchmakers gravitated, if you like, to this new industry, which is kind of it's an interesting fact. But I mean, just to add to that, through my career, I never ceased to be amazed at the innovative spirit that existed in our industry pioneers.
We thank John very much for joining us, and thank you for tuning in. For more information on the ESPV project, head to our website, c4net.com.au, or follow our LinkedIn at the Centre for New Energy Technologies.